Hello Facebook friends, and welcome to this, the third promotional video for my new novel Panic and Pleasure in the Streets of Gibraltar, which will be published by MXMMFIXXION Books shortly. As we approach publication date, I wanted to share further insights and some more of the constituent elements of my new novel. Let me also say, by way of introduction, that all of us in great measure are what we choose to read, and indeed what we deliberately spurn and purposely and consciously decide not to read. Writers are often, if not always, also readers. It is a largely unavoidable duality of our identity, something that naturally influences the outlook and the perspective, perhaps even the way in which we relate and interact with the world. My work as a writer definitely reflects my preferences and my calculated choices as a reader, as a voracious but selective consumer of books. Panic and Pleasure in the Streets of Gibraltar is not a conventional novel. I do not follow the established literary rules and conventions of the genre, something which in 2017 is not unusual in itself. I take great pleasure in breaking the rules, but in fact, like everything else, literature has gone full circle and an unconventional style has been codified into a literary convention in its own right. I have followed my creative instinct, a path that has been forged by all the books that I have ever read, by all the authors that I admire, and whose stories and narratives have left profound imprints on my understanding of the literary aesthetic. Also, by all the words I have ever written, because influence never ceases, and ultimately there is a promiscuous convergence of multiple stimuli and catalysts and propellants, internal and external, from which evolves a personal and transferable narrative voice. The process to develop your own voice is indeed a rewarding struggle, a beautiful experience, and in Panic and Pleasure in the Streets of Gibraltar, I have been able to carve a space and a presence for it in the literary arena. There can be no limits or restrictions in the search for literary inspiration, for the building blocks that form the foundations of the work, and you draw from all possible tools at your disposal, whether it's fantasy, raw or muted emotions, the imagination, real-life experiences, fiction and surrealism and expressionism and reality, the absurd, humor, lyricism, aspects of popular culture, television, among many other, even local television, during the time of George Vallarino, thanks to whom I got early exposure, back in the early 1990s, to the first and second seasons of the seminal series Twin Peaks. Panic and Pleasure in the Streets of Gibraltar is also a tribute to all the things that form an important part of my understanding of the world around me. It has given me a platform to express my aesthetic vision of art, beauty, music, cinema, literature, of the very act of writing, and of other cultural artifacts. In Panic and Pleasure in the Streets of Gibraltar, I have sought to pursue some of the knowledge of the world, to concentrate and portray in a finite medium some of the great issues that concern the human condition, the binary nature of life and death, light and darkness, reality and fiction, in a manner that will stimulate further questions and inquiry. The novel is a 21st century dance macabre, where characters play the part fill their time before expiring, as is our nature and ultimate destiny. The work reflects the regenerative power of literature, its extraordinary essence, depicting, analyzing, suspecting, and juxtaposing opposites, covering trivial, everyday events, but also the transcendental and vital questions that afflict us and our human consciences. Finally, my novel is clearly a product of a strenuous thought process, an act of creative manipulation, and the exercise of unlimited power within parameters that I set out beforehand. The author usually wins these introspective battles, but when it gets really interesting is when he or she is also going on a voyage of discovery, where you know when you set out, where it is that you want to get to, and what it is that you want to achieve. But then you are coaxed by the very dynamics of the narrative, and you encounter new possibilities, unexplored territories that prove rich and rewarding for the literary creator. Thank you very much for listening. This is the third promotional video for my new novel, Panic and Pleasure in the Streets of Gibraltar. Have a great weekend. I'll see you soon. Good night and thank you.